Okay, folks, welcome back. This is episode 2 of season 4. This is sort of like a redone interview because what was it? Maybe last week or so, we both tried to do this again, but my audio got very jumbled up because I was using a pair of uh, power pods I recently got. So I was like, oh, I could finally use it for my thing, but apparently it can't really be used for recording an interview. So, yeah. Uh, Krista, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. Oh, and those who are just joining us again, this is Krista Cohen. She's a previous guest on the show. She's got a lot of stories to tell now that production has gone back to somewhat bearable things, where it's just like, well, production's back to normal-ish. So yeah, Krista, what has life gotten you in terms of production be going back to New York? I mean, New York production. How has production treated you since going back?
Well, now is not a great time to be working in the film industry. There's very little work available, and what is available is like under the table, not COVID compliant, just honestly worse work than there was before COVID. So that's why I'm happy to stay unemployed for however long it takes for the industry to get back to at least some
Yeah.
standard. In the meantime, I got my OSHA 10. I have the intention to join Local 52 someday. Next is a driver's license, then a lift license, and hopefully I'll be, working on union gigs soon.
Yeah, I think it's odd because what you just mentioned before, it isn't really. There are certain independent films because, like over the weekend, I hope to at least do an independent film because one of my previous guests, Yoko, at the time of this thing, he was actually filming his short, like first feature film, and so I gotta go down to Brooklyn College and then hop into a van or car or what have you, and then drive out to Floyd Bennett's Field on Sunday to do like a hopefully a quick what have you seen because because by the time we get back by the time it's 4 o'clock it's already getting darker, so especially now it's like winter now. But yeah, and this is something that we both touched upon last time when we were talking before the audio got corrupted on my side, was that oh, that's your side, okay. I was like, what the hell is that? So yeah, uh, and this is something that I kind of talked to you about previously too, which was essentially now there is a like an influx of people who do need people, but it is going to be very shady on like what terms and like what is the terms, all that stuff too. Because I even got even though I am like an actor, I still am like very professional in terms of when I had to do like the behind the scenes work. So if it's like, hey, where is this thing gonna be? You need the five W's: the who, the what, the when, the where, the why. Well, not the why, but those four W's will just work just nicely. But yeah, it it's a lot more difficult now with COVID because I think a lot more people need to be more mindful of who's on the crew, right? So, in your experience, like, has that been an issue on like how many people have been on a crew and how many people you think were doing the best job, or people who were just being on there were just like, yeah, you know what, they're just there just for because they know the director or they know the producer, blah 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 blah.
Well, the very few productions I've worked on during COVID have been skeleton crews, have been, um, as few people as possible, people wearing a lot of different hats. The crews themselves have been functional, certainly, um, but they're just projects that don't really, how do I say this?
They don't feel like they had the passion behind it.
Well, One person does typically. The director typically does, and then, other people are just kind of paid to be there. And there's nothing wrong with that as long as the money is there to pay people. I was on a production in September that, you know, that um like when they wrapped, I was only on it for 3 days, but
Yeah.
when they wrapped, the director slash producer sent us this sob story email about how, oh God, I was overtaken. I just wanted my movie paid. I didn't care how. So, I worry about how I'm gonna pay you. I was like, oh my God, why did I get myself into this? Luckily, I ended up getting paid. A little after my invoice was overdue, but it's not the worst thing in the world. But it's eerie to think that there are people out there who are not waiting on the funding to
Yeah.
to make their productions and are just flying, how does it go? Flying by the seat of their pants?
Yeah.
It's
Riding by the seat
very,
of the pants if they're a writer, but flying by the seat of the pants if they're basically behind the production. It's much more it's much more tough as a writer when you got to do it on the fly because you sometimes have to really think about. I've been in placements where it's like, okay, do I need to actually fix this in terms because of who's acting in this production, that sort of thing. Especially if it goes against their own personal beliefs, like just don't worry about it. I'll tone it down. But when it becomes a production, it's like, uh, you know, uh, short story aside, long story aside, a few years ago, I tried doing my own production of a play I did, and it was really hard because the original director bowed out because of work commitment stuff, so he couldn't do it. And here I was, like, literally directing at the seat of my own pants, whereas, like, I had no idea how to direct because I only directed, like, maybe once, which was like a 10-minute play festival like years ago. So I only have like maybe a little bit of memory of like what to do with directing, and I only figure as an actor, I figure only as an actor I know how to do. I know how to talk to actors, that sort of thing, but I don't know how to direct. So yeah, when you have to do, and that production was a little chaotic towards the end too because of stuff I really can't go into because of I guess legal reasons or something like that. And that was only for like a 10-minute play that was going to be put on stage and stuff. And I yeah, and I did a lot of stuff that personally on my own pocket, stuff like that. So and it goes to what you just said before is like when there is a director or at least producer who does it, who is passionate about the project, they will pay out of their own pocket, that sort of thing. Especially if I don't have enough money to pay the amount of crew, I would try and do the best to pay with whatever stuff I have for the crew anyway. Uh, but yeah, I, it's much more crazier now in terms of COVID because yes, you do have to run with a skeleton crew, but it's it's making sure that skeleton crew is not only the best, but the best what you could get in terms of just timing. Especially if you need to talk to people who you already know. It's like, hey, I'm doing a project. You know, I don't know how much I could pay, but is it possible you could do it? You could say, yeah, of course, I could pay, but then you could be like the more professionalism, where it's just like, okay, but how much you gotta be paying me because I can't really be working, you know, just for food and pizza or something like that, or drinks and pizza, and that's another thing where it's just like, yeah, it's like people could pay in full, people could pay in food, but pizza or soda, pretzels, they could only do so much without actually having, hey, we need actual money for this, for my job, because you know, I've seen your work, and your work is pretty impressive. And so I'd be like, I do not want to have her just like not be paid, and just like, what? She made a great sword that looks realistic, and I only could pay her with just like, like maybe $40 just for this whole thing, when the whole thing could probably be paying like 180 or something like that, or even more depending on how much material you use. So it, yeah, it goes up. So yeah, and again, the production I just mentioned before with my former guest, I asked him point blank, is like, will I be paid for this production? He's like, I'm sorry, you won't be paid, but because if I had enough money, I would pay everyone in the thing, but I would only be able to pay like the actors and stuff like that. So it's just, I think in terms of just production stuff, it's only because of who you know and who you feel comfortable with. Because if you feel comfortable with, you're just like, okay, fine, I can do this one production. It won't be anything at all, but but when the next production comes, it's like I need to get paid for that production. Otherwise, it just feels like you're just doing this. Just it feels like, and this is something that draws upon that what I mentioned to you like a few days ago, which was that uh, I was in a similar production like yours back at one of my old colleges, right? And wait, is that your cat or mine?
It's mine. He
Okay.
talks a lot. My
Okay.
son. Come here, honey. No, I can take him. He wants to be a part of everything. Handsome.
Anyway, because I heard a cat, I'm like, wait, is that my cat outside or yours? Anyway, yeah, it's. Ooh.
You dove through your hands. It's not my fault.
No.
You want to be helped.
Young man.
Yeah.
He just he can't see, but he jumps anyway. Why would you do that, baby boy?
Aww.
Why are you like this?
It's a little gremlin.
Oh, my beloved gremlin. Poor thing. He's blind. Well, he's not fully blind, but he's blind enough that I don't trust him to try and jump himself. Although
Yeah.
he keeps trying to do it. It's a shame.
Yeah. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah. But yeah, it's a lot worse, especially if you're an actor. So you're kind of used to like doing productions where it is nothing, where it is essentially nothing, where you're not getting paid for anything. Uh, because relating back to it is like a few years ago, I was in a production for some like like avant-garde movie or something like that, and it was shooting on campus, so I didn't have to go anywhere that far. It was a day out of my own. It was a day where I didn't have to go anywhere. It was like it was a free day. It was my free day, and sure enough, I'm not getting paid, but I'm getting paid with food. So I'm like, okay. So it's like there's pretzels, there's chips, there's water, there's whatever. And my whole job was essentially just lay in bed, act as I was a patient at some hospital, and play cards or something like that. And the director, he seemed like an okay guy because he seemed like I think I auditioned from it because of like I short like plastered around campus like, hey, we're looking for people for this production, blah blah blah. And sure enough, he's like, oh, I think it'd be a good fit, blah blah blah. And sure enough, the production itself for that one day felt so chaotic because the guy didn't know how to direct. And I'm looking at this other guy, my other actor, I mean, co-star over there, and is like, and we're literally on bed, just like on our phones, just as the guy is like. It tells you a lot when the director has trouble setting up one shot, and that one shot takes at least 3 hours to get through. And here we are, just literally in the bed, just like waiting for that one shot to be over. And by the time it got through the rest of the scenes, because the scenes itself were very quick, because they weren't like very talkative scenes. They were like literally like maybe transition scenes where it's literally like someone's talking. It's like someone's like people would be on the bed, and then it'd be like a fade out or something like that, or it's like a dissolve, that sort of thing, and be like less people there. So you get the sense of like that sort of thing. But yeah, it literally took maybe 3 hours just to get through one scene or one shot because the guy literally did not know how to not only handle the actor in front of him, but just handle his own writing. Where it's just like he wrote the thing, and it was something he was trying to do for the film festival that was happening. So yeah, it was insane to work with. And afterwards, like after the day, I was just like, I'll be just surprised if that film even gets even finished and whatnot, because I don't even think my scene will be even on the on the thing. So, and sure enough, I got an email saying, "Hey Brian, I'm sorry, it's we couldn't really finish the thing because the funding ran out, whatever funding they had, and the lead actor kind of like quit on me. So I have no like I had nothing to really show for it. So I'm like, okay. And then I met him up like literally the next semester or so, and he had another film, and I was like, oh, I was hoping that wasn't the film that you did with me because it sounded like the same film that you just made, but it was like, no, 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 it's a totally different film. But he was hoping to do the same film again, and he was hoping for me to get on it. And I was like, yeah, sure, maybe. And it's weird because when you're an actor starting out, you're kind of expected to do these student films, right? It's like it's making your bones. When it's but when you're out on the professional field and you got to do these student films, it's like it gets more redundant after a while. So I get the sensation is like, hey, you need to get, if this is a professional crew, you need to pay your crew, but how can you pay a crew when the producer or something like that really doesn't want to pay them? And they only pay, X amount of people, and that X amount of people will just not be the crew. So yeah, it's it's uh it's very shady for the most part, especially post COVID, where it's just like the same things are happening, but they can't do like 20 people on a set. They can only do like maybe 5 or 7 people on a set, and then but it's the same type of practices where it's like, oh, we won't be able to pay you. I'm like, okay, and it gets a little disheartening after a while. And I do understand why you want to go to union things, where it's just like, oh, union things. You're basically on a set for like 10, 15 hours a day doing actually and getting paid for stuff like, hey, you need, you're part of the props department or you're part of the art department, this thing needs to get fixed for this scene later, or maybe this, and it's like, okay, just give me the materials, and then a week later, you get like a good check for it. So it's like, it, but it is sad how essentially there are productions, especially if you're looking on backstage, where it's just like the same amount of productions where it's just like, hey, we're shooting a scene for our class. We need the actors. I'm like, I just can't do those things anymore. It's like once you graduate from like college or stuff like that, that trial by fire, and entry level stuff, you can't want to just go into intermediate stuff. So yeah,
I've stopped taking student films because I realized that I don't have a whole lot to learn from them
yeah,
anymore. It's just a matter of like if you want to be effective on a set, any set, you're going to do your homework. You're going to make sure that you know exactly what's going to be done on set, what needs to be prepared, which materials are time sensitive because they have to be ordered promptly, how to get a hold of money, how to budget, and all that. I've become good enough at the homework that a lot of times I will get on board a student production. They'll I'll give them a budget, proposal, that's broken down like to the nth degree. Every single thing I'm gonna need, how I'm gonna get it, where I'm gonna get it from, um, how much labor it's going to take on my part. I'll send them, send them these budget proposals, and they'll go, "Huh, we didn't expect it to cost that much. Can we not pay you or pay you later?" And I go, "No, I'd like to be paid, within the net 30. That's pretty, it's standard for New York City." And a lot of times they'll end up ghosting me. So, you know, uh, I I'm no longer doing student films because a lot of times they cannot afford the work that they need done.
Yeah.
They expect somebody to just swoop in with, with their own car, their own materials, everything from home, this, and that. And I don't, I try not to own a lot of stuff. I am not, a walking prop house. Things need to be bought or rented or fabricated. There needs to be time and money to do that. And a lot of times student productions are not, and it's it's not entirely their fault. There's no real education in film school on how to interact with art, how to plan for art. Um, so I get that. I just don't need to suffer for it anymore. I don't need to be part of it anymore when I could, I can do better.
Yeah, and it's sad because people can do better. It's just that it's a lot. I think it's because a lot of people just expect people to be very uh, just okay with not being paid at all, especially if you're doing a student film. Because if you're doing a student film, like, yeah, it's a student film. It's like it's very amateurish. There are student films that aren't really amateurish, like they are doing the best work that they can. But when you're doing like student film after student film, it's like you just get the sensation that okay, maybe people are just using you because you're very you just say okay to you're just easy to say okay with, or they know that you had the materials already on hand because people already work with you. So yeah, it's good to have some materials on hand, especially if you live in a house where a lot of materials that seem that you need to have just seem to be magically by you somewhere. So, especially if you know, uh, quick story. Uh, a few years ago, I actually had to play a Martian, right? And the director wanted to buy a ray gun, right? And I was like, no, 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 I got a ray gun at home, don't worry. And he goes, Brian, don't, we could pay you to get you a ray gun. I'm like, don't worry, I have a ray gun. And I come into school with the ray gun and I go, yeah, what do you think of this? And the ray gun itself is a Han Solo blaster from, I believe maybe when Return of the Jedi was released in theaters for the special edition, so they were coming out with special like toys and stuff like that. And it's a very reddish gun, so it looks very alien-esque. And my director goes, Brian, this doesn't feel right. And I was like, just don't worry about it. And sure enough, I use this gun on stage, right? And everyone who always sees that gun gets a very not only good laugh for it, but people will always like, yeah, I know that gun. It's the Han Solo gun. So yeah, it works when you do have the materials on hand. But at the same time, if you do have that material on hand, especially if it's a prop that they need, you kind of want to get something out of that because, you know, just because you have a good old fashioned desk that you barely use, and they just gotta be using it for the production, doesn't mean that desk is for free. So just because I'm lending you this doesn't mean it's gonna be for free. I kind of want to have something in return. So people kind of think, oh, okay, well, you will get credit for it. I'm like, okay, that's good credit, but I need something else in return. So think about that in the future. So it's like, and yeah, it's like people get very stingy or stingy. There we go. People get very stingy on payment because you know you know it's a
They
sad
think it
fact.
can be they think it can be delayed. They think that just
Yeah,
because, um, I am not a material that needs to be bought immediately or else we can't shoot, um, that they can delay paying their contractor, which is a habit that I want to be like eradicated from filmmaking. I think that is some student film bullshit and that it needs to die.
yeah,
The director that I mentioned earlier, who had me, work on a feature, he was like, "Yeah, I'm so glad with your work. I'd like to work together again." I was honest with him. I said, "Dude, making this film the way you did was unacceptable. I don't see you as a professional. I don't think I'll work with you in any capacity where you are like above me,
yeah,
just because, you work irresponsibly." I didn't say it in that many
yeah.
words, but
But you
you
kind of
know,
said it in a way that felt like you were actually saying it was essentially the truth, but you weren't saying it directly like that.
yeah, just I don't want people to get the idea that this is okay and that
Yeah,
this is normal for you to just kind of rack up a whole lot of debt in labor and then throw up your hands when it comes time to pay. That is not stuff that gets you forward in the industry. A lot of times people think, once I get my movie made, it'll then sell and then I'll have the money to pay for it. That's not a functional way to think about financing your film, and that's going to end up burning a lot of people.
yeah,
I want to say this to the guy because he was in his 30s. He had graduated from from college when I was like in middle school. This is not a lesson that you need to learn this late in your career. This is somebody who, wanted their film made no matter what, and they did it no matter what. I'm just glad that I wasn't burned, too badly in the process.
yeah.
I don't
Uh,
know about the other contractors though, so.
yeah. Let me see. Sure. Yeah, it's sort of the same thing with theater, where it's just like I've had productions where they will pay you in snippets, but that's only towards like the end of production, where it's just like it's especially if you come off on the end of the production, so like the last day or so, just to strike everything down, and they'll pay you like maybe a week later or something like that. So it's like it's fairly noticeable. It's just like yeah, it is what it is. But I had a great boss who actually paid me out of her own pocket, because not only was she like the only one there who was really doing a lot of work, but she really needed someone to do stuff. I was like, and it was amazing to get it, like, especially since I did a lot of work the previous day to take off a lot of stuff, especially striking down a lot of the set. And we actually transported that set to other, storage locations. And, at the end of the day, while we were actually getting another set piece from like Farmingdale, she actually paid me out of her own pocket because she knew that I was really, really doing the best work. And she really didn't want me to be paid uh, less than I was originally going to be, get. So yeah, it's when there's a lot more people who could do that initiative where it's just like pay you kind of like upfront, or at least like maybe something upfront. That means like, hey, they actually mean business and they do want to do business with you. But then there are people who kind of like don't pay you and just pay you with just like food and stuff, which is it depends on the if it's for a student film, I can understand, especially if it's like something you need to shoot for class and it's something that you need to ed within the next like 2 weeks. So I can understand, hey, we don't have no budget, so we're just gonna use whatever location we have. And I've been there. But if it's a a film you see on something like Backstage, where it's just like, oh, and I'm not like shooting shit on Backstage. It's just that Backstage, it has been known for being, no, yeah, it has been known for being like very student film esque. Whereas it's like if you're an aspiring artist or actor, apply on Backstage, and chances are 9 out of 10 apply. I mean, 9 out of 10 applications for a job, you probably you probably won't hear back. But one of those jobs you do hear back, it was like, okay, payment, no pay, deferred pay, and like, or stippets. And like, deferred pay sounds okay, especially if that sounds like it's money up front. But deferred pay really just means, I might be wrong, but the deferred pay, it means when this thing is made, meaning when this production is fully made and fully realized, especially if it's a film thing, and we get money off of it, you get some percentage off of that. So I think that's what deferred pay means. I might be wrong.
I always thought deferred pay was just pay later, like we'll pay you when we can. However that's financed is, it's of no consequence to the
Okay.
freelancer.
It might be the same thing too. So it depends on. I think it depends on the meaning of deferred pay. But yeah, it's. But then I would hear from my friends, and my friends were like, "Oh, why don't you just try, such and such, like Actors Access, where it's just like you get a lot more actual jobs, and a lot of these jobs actually feel like jobs, and like the job market itself. It's like so it it's hard to do acting, but also it's much more hard to do with production now because there isn't really that many productions around New York City. I mean, there are, aside from like the major ones that you just mentioned before, the union ones, which is like, what's CBS doing this week? Okay, what's NBC doing this week? What's Fox doing this week? What's ABC able to film around here this week? Is the CW filming one of the shows around here too? Is HBO Max doing one of those shows around here? It's like it gets to a point where a lot of these, uh, like the productions you want to be on, it's you can't go into those productions until done the union thing, where it's just like you gotta get into the union, and then that's when you jump onto those union jobs. Uh, but yeah, how did that union thing come about? It's like did you apply to that, or was it just like I know a couple of people who could probably get me onto that union, so they could talk to me, and I could actually fill out some forms like that.
Well, there's always, talk of the union even in film school. I just graduated in May and I decided, oh boy, I don't want to stay in the indie film scene too long, so let me look into union application. Apparently what you do is you get all your licenses first. You get your lift license, you get your OSHA 10, although they may be changing it to OSHA 30, in order to make it harder to get into, which is fine by me. I could sit for 20 more hours. Especially if it means like safety on set, which I'm very important. It's very important to me. Um, so you get all your stuff together, and then as far as I know, you contact the union and say that you want to be put on the overhire list. Then when union productions need to staff up and they run out of people who are in, card carrying union members who are available to do that work, they'll then go to their overhire list, which is people like me who want to eventually join the union. So with enough hours, you become eligible for union membership, and by then, people in the union know you well enough, know the quality of your work, and can recommend you for membership. So, I know a few people who are in that who are, excuse me. I know a few people who are in that position who are working towards union membership, and I realize that, the quality of my work is on par with theirs. I can do what they do, so, I shouldn't feel hesitant about applying. All set.
Okay. All right. Where were we? So yeah, union jobs, I feel like, are a great source and for not only not only showing how you're on set, but showing how well you do with these sort of like predicaments in terms of, hey, uh, there was actually a meme I saw on a Facebook group, movie set memes, where it's like, oh, people laugh at grips, and then they actually find out how much grips make, and I'm like, you make how much that much? Just by just standing around and just holding the thing like this? Or no, not no, that's a boom mic, the person. Grips are the ones who basically stage hands, and I think they're stage hands in movie
They're
terms.
they're like the Lego people. So you've got your electricians who, uh, put together the lighting stuff, but then you need stands and such, and all sorts of, you know, you need to rig up stuff to, make it work, and that's done by grips.
Yeah. Uh, it, I do feel like being on a movie set, though, it's like even though there's a lot of people on that set, even though there are a lot of job titles on a movie set, I feel like a lot of those job titles do interconnect with a lot of things. So even though you know the DOP might be the guy who be making sure that the light is good and all that stuff, making sure all those, sunset, if the sun is hitting just right. He's also the guy who's probably going to be like running around making sure that the light itself is actually being at the good point too, because like in theater, I guess in a way where my brain is trying to say is like in theater, uh, you do wear many hats in theater and also film too. So especially nowadays, where it's just like a lot more people have to do the same job more than once.
Except if you're in different unions, there's a lot of complaints people do about, or complaining people do about how very, very separate union jobs are, as in, like, you can't touch and move the equipment of another department because then you're, violating such and such union agreements. Like, it's really, the jobs are so, so separate, to the point where it delays things. But I see myself as very able to work with that. I figure that those, delineations work okay as long as everyone is doing their jobs, everyone is on point. So I look forward to having a very specialized job. I don't want to be,
Yeah,
I'm so sick of people recruiting me as, say, a set dresser, an art director, a props master, what have you, and then saying, "Ooh, could you do wardrobe too? Ooh, could you do makeup too? Ooh, could you?" And I just go, "Ooh," it's to me, it's like sacrilege. I want that to also be left behind,
yeah,
in the student film world, because it's just not how productions go. We have specialized jobs for a reason because we're very, very good at them.
yeah. Even though I have a background with sound engineering, I am not a sound engineer. I could only work the Audacity machine or Premiere Audition as much as I can, and still be somewhat credible. I'm not an editor, so as people who watch the show can see, I'm clearly not a good editor. But I edit at least something good and manageable each week for people to watch the show or even listen to. So, but what I am though is more of a hands-on person, whereas basically I do very good stagehand work, and I do very good acting when the need calls for it. But I do feel like I am more of an actor than I am a stagehand. But between those two jobs, I would probably pick the stagehand stuff because there's a lot more stuff I can do behind the scenes, and get paid to do for that stuff to do, especially if you're just wheeling, especially for big Broadway shows, and it is a big scene transition, within maybe 30 to 40 seconds on stage, and it's still dark outside, and you gotta wheel off like maybe 15 pieces of set within like a span of like 15 seconds. that you can still get paid for very handsomely. So yeah, but if you just gotta be doing it as a stagehand, and you gotta be willing off like two big set pieces within a span like maybe 14 seconds, and you're not gonna be paying for it, I'm like, why am I still doing this? Like,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's like what you just said before. Even though you have like, even though you've done like set dressing and makeup stuff, you're not like you don't have like a background on that. You could just like I have some experience for that, but not like a full experience. Whereas just like I had that experience, but I would rather be doing this experience, which is basically arts, the art department or like set designer or whatever, what have you. Whereas like I wanted to show people what I could actually do instead of just doing, hey, yeah, I know how to. All right, just give me a couple of seconds. Okay, this is a good fix for clothing and stuff like that.
It's
You know,
insulting to both jobs to expect one person to do both because, both of them suffer. I'm not a makeup artist. I've never claimed to be, but it's it's not right to, pass off these jobs as if they're not necessary to hire a whole other person to do that. If my attention is divided between the next set that's being built and the prop that's being used in this scene right now, and oh god, there's some shine on so and so's face, my work is going to suffer, and it's not going to be something that I can put my stamp of approval on, that I can say I'm proud to have
yeah,
done, because my attention was divided in a million different directions.
yeah, because you definitely do want to uh, show that not only you made a good, good stuff on set, but if you're kind of like being pulled towards different things, where it's like, hey, you have a background in photography, can you be the on-set photographer? I'm like, okay, uh, but maybe that your job could be essentially your job is essentially a boom, what was it, sound? Yeah, the sound, like the sound guy and on
The
set.
sound, the sound mixer.
Yeah, the sound mixer, where it's just basically you're making sure that people are people are very quiet on set. You get the tone, that sort of thing, especially if it's going to be like a loud area or maybe even quiet area, that sort of thing too.
Right.
But people were like, hey, just because you know some form of photography doesn't mean that is your background. Because, and this is what we were just talking about before, is like people do take advantage of people or because of just different things, yeah, people take advantage of people because of just different things altogether, because of their not only background but also their what's the term, personal experiences with them. Because just because if they know each other, i.e., they're friends, they could obviously be a lot more. Hey, can you do this? Can you do this also? Instead of just hiring more people for that, because in especially if they're friends, they figured they could just use their friendship for them and ask them to do more stuff instead of just hiring more people on that set or hiring more people for that production. So they could save money just by asking their friends, especially since they know, hey, can you really do this? I know I know you're I know you're a sound mixer, but can you do the on-set photography? Can you also do some of the camera work too? It's like it it gets a little hectic. I will say that, especially if because a few years ago. I had to pay one of my friends out of my own pocket because not only was he the uh, my designer, but he was also going to be the guy who took photos for the program. So I had to pay him out of my own pocket because he was also my photographer and my photo designer, playbill designer, and also my poster designer. So I wanted to have a nice little thing, even though it was a 10-minute play. I wanted to give people who were watching this play, oh wow, this is a good design for a poster and whatnot. Especially if it's got to be spread around on social media too.
Mm-hmm.
So so yeah, my friend wore essentially not only, and he's primarily a photographer too, so he knows something about setting up a shot because he has a film background of like I think DOP, yeah, being a director of photography, but he also is a photographer himself. So I was like, hey, can you just do stuff for like program stuff where it's just like there's a little circle, there's a little head right there, just circle of the head, and there's a little bio right there. It's like circle of the head, bio, blah blah blah. And of course, a few weeks later, it's like, Brian, can you pay me for this thing? I'm like, yeah, sure. Just give me a couple of just give me a day or so to pay you because yeah, I'm still not, I wasn't sure, I still wasn't sure how to pay people online because I'm just so used to paying people in person because it was like, I used to just pay people in person or people would pay me in person. So I was still very unused. I mean, what I'm trying to say, I wasn't really used to paying people online. So yeah, that was what I was trying to say. So yeah, and it is something where it's just something where it's like, there are people who are friends with people on a film set who do try and use their friendship to have them do more than what they are paid to do, and also what their job is to do. So yeah,
I'm very selective about the friends that I make on set. I don't like to get dragged into shit show productions, and I give that vibe on set. I'm very professional, very proactive. Um, so, people get the impression, and it's correct, that I'll only really work for pay and that I want to be on productions that are organized, that are professional. I want others around me to do their homework so that my homework, contributes to something good, contributes to, the best work possible.
yeah. And how can you do that when people are actually taking advantage of that friendship because hey, just because we're friends for like 5 years now doesn't mean you could still stinge me out of payment and stuff like that. I think I was talking to you this about what was it when we were first doing this interview, and I was talking about how essentially I won't name names, but there was a friend of mine, and they wanted me to not only act but also be like the photo model for this character, be the main character essentially about this like lone wolf type of character, and they would have been paying me like $50 per day, so I would have been, and it was a 2 day shoot, and I would have been making at least over $100 of just being essentially staying around and acting like there was a staying around and just acting like there was a scene right in front of me. But in the end, he really just didn't want to. Maybe, yeah. He in the end, he really just didn't want to either pay me out of his own pocket because he only had two people, so that was only, and so those two people would have been like $200 already.
Then
And
don't promise stuff like that. I that's one of my biggest pet peeves when people will just straight up lie about intentions to pay you. That's why it doesn't sound good, but I plan on starting my own blacklist. You know how there's on Facebook there's Deadbeat Producers Club where
yeah,
people get called out for non-payment. I am starting my own personal blacklist that I'm going to keep for myself. That's people who work on, shit show productions, put together shit show productions, people who pay late, but not late enough to submit to Deadbeat Producers Club, um, people who post on Facebook, "Hey, I'm trying to make my first feature film for $30,000. I want to remember who they are and not work with them because whatever they're going to be making cannot possibly be any good."
yeah. Uh, I've seen some of that happen with Indiegogo. What was it? Indiegogo. Uh, what's the other ones? Kickstart and yeah, mostly of those like type of things where it's just like, oh, it's a Kickstarter and like Indiegogo type of GoFundMe. There we go. Where it's just like those are the type of productions that was like, hey, we need to raise like $10,000 for my first production or something like that, or maybe even 25,000. Yeah, 25,000 for my production of my first feature film, and hopefully with the people who I know, blah 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 blah, maybe they could help us or something to that effect. But in the end, it's like you can only pay. You're probably gonna be only getting like a quarter of like of what you got, like X, especially if it's like only for 30 days. If you're if the thing was like maybe in 6 months, you want to get like 25,000 in 6 months. It's possible you might be getting 35%, maybe even 40% of that, but it's still a long shot to do because you still got to probably take out loan after loan after loan of just like, you know, just getting equipment stuff, that sort of thing too, especially if you're going to be renting out equipment, especially, and there it is another thing where it's just like basically, hey, can we borrow your camera for a while? It's like,
I applaud people for trying to, stretch a small amount of money so that
lasts the entire production.
I applaud them for trying, but I don't have enough faith in the product most of the time. I don't have enough faith in the product to put my labor into that and to potentially not get paid or be paid late. I don't need to be part of it. I'm usually this is not my friend who does this. This is not somebody, I feel in any way indebted to. I want to do work and be paid for it. And just because I chose to work in a creative field doesn't mean that I'd like to work for free or work for passion or work for exposure. It doesn't
Yeah.
pay my rent.
Or work for just experience. That's for a lot,
Got plenty.
Yeah, I got plenty of experience too. It's just that there are just certain things where it's just like I just want to know how well this thing works and how well this thing doesn't feel like at all. Just yeah, I don't want to have projects. Yeah, I don't want to have projects in the end where it just feels like was it really all that worth it just to do you know a 1 day production where I was just lying in bed and the set was just chaotic as anything. But yeah, it just gets to a point where it's just like you got to think about yourself and you just got to think about the product that you're doing, and the product that you're doing you want to get not only recognition for it but also some money from that too, especially if it's like a legitimately good thing where it's just like that looks impressive. They must have got paid a lot just for that thing, and then you find out, well, I wasn't really paid for anything, so it was like it kind of like so yeah, it's sad that yeah, it's sad that there are productions where it's just like, especially nowadays, where it's just like there are people who still do take advantage of those types where it's just like, I know you're my friend, I need your help for this thing, and in the end, they're not gonna be paying you anything at all. So yeah, it's film production is weird in the long run, which is very sad because I don't think my professors in either of my colleges really talked about that type of aspect in film, where it's just like, yeah, just don't worry, just be prepared that there are going to be productions where they do take advantage of you, where it's just like, you know, yeah, I don't think either of my professors in any of my colleges actually talked about that sort of thing. Where it's just like, I understand, I'm not talking about it because, i.e., it's not really that much to talk about, but it should be noted that even when you are graduating, or even if you are working freelance, you gotta run into these sort of problems. Where is this going to be? Will this production pay me on time, or will this production pay me at all?
I don't want to be in that for very long at all. It's not a great place to be in. And frankly, the content that gets made in that fashion, in the fashion of like fly by the seat of your pants,
Yeah.
it's rarely ever very good. So, I, you know, I don't really
Uh,
care if someone's heart gets broken that they can't make a feature with $10,000.
there is a great, well, not great, but there is an interesting backstory about the type of stuff that happens on actual like independent movie sets, and how, especially if it's like something that's going to be made online, right? Uh, Several years ago, there was a website, Channel Awesome. They did a like anniversary film, like every year or so they would do an anniversary film, and a lot of people who worked on that site have told how bad it was filming, because the guys who would be paying, not the guys who were in charge, really didn't know how to, how well to work with, not only not only how unwell they were doing in terms of filming, but also just unwell in terms of just production standards. And that was one reason why a lot of people, basically because of production standpoints and how bad these producers were actually treating the other producers, that's why a lot of people were leaving that site. So yeah, it's like what you were just saying before, with the people who there are people who that burn your bridges, and I've known I burned a few bridges myself, and those bridges aren't going to be built anytime soon. Even if someone does try and even if they are trying to like be very respectful for me, like, no, that burned bridge is going to stay burned for a while. So, especially if you're doing stuff for a professional standpoint too. So yeah. Uh, it's just sad that people do take advantage of not only. I think the reason why people do take advantage is because people think that, like, oh, just because you graduated, or just because you're in a student thing, they don't know, they figure they don't know, know uh the business side of a lot of things. So, and that might be true, but also there could be they could be talking to someone like you who knows a lot of business side. So yeah. So in short, COVID production still the same. I mean, productions that are still in COVID, like the COVID thing, where it's just like the COVID era of production scenario, especially around the tri-state, or at least in New York City, still the same. Whereas like they people still running around the same problems. It won't be the same. I mean, there are people who do have the same problems regardless, but yeah, it's like you talk about great deals. Like, there are people who aren't getting paid because of either. I mean, there are people who don't get paid because of relationships, i.e., they're great friends with the producers, or they're just doing it out of their own pocket, or just not getting paid because the producers don't want to sprung up an extra like $100 or something like that, or extra, what is it, $300 or what have you, because they don't want to be over budget or something like that. Even though there are films that do go over budget and people are getting paid on time. Anyway, I don't feel like I need to do those three questions as I said before previously, because this is a returning guest. I don't feel like I don't yeah because you are a returning guest. I don't feel like uh I need to say those three questions again. But those who don't know you, where can we find you? Uh, if you do have any social media.
So I am on Instagram. People typically ask me for that instead of a business card. I'm on Instagram. My Instagram is Netflix and kill with underscores. I might even write that down just so that it's clear.
Which is a great name, by the way.
I get approached from people who I get approached by people who want to buy it and kill. There we go. Oh, that might need to be flipped.
There we go.
Alrighty, so yeah, Netflix underscore and underscore kill. That's the best way to reach me if you're interested in my work. I'm just to be clear. Hold on, there's a plane passing.
It's a season.
So I do art department work. I can work as either an art director, props master, art department coordinator, set dresser. I do it all just because I need the work. But my real passion is props. So if you ever need a props master, I'm your gal. I also fabricate props. So, reach out to me for an estimate.
That's another thing I would love to talk to you about is just props in general, because I feel like that could be I feel like that could be another discussion by itself, because I've only done props for my prop class, and it's sad because before COVID struck, we had the idea of using the 3D printer for my class, so we could have been using the 3D printer for that sort of thing. So I would love to talk with you about the differences of actual handmade props from actual wear and tear to something that was made out of a 3D printer. So, and I feel like you would probably have a good, like, long little rant about, well, a 3D printer has its pros, but let me tell you about the cons. It's not handcrafted.
I mean, I do have a little bit to say about 3D printing. I have never dabbled in it, but I'm absolutely interested in it. But yes, there are pros and cons to 3D printing, which we may
Hopefully,
talk about in the future.
yes, I do hope to catch you. I mean, have you on the guest at least maybe sometime in the future, maybe in the next few months, around like say April, May, because that's when I assume all the productions may go back to normal-ish. Because right now there's talk of the vaccines and stuff like that. There's like maybe 3 vaccines already out or in testing now, and it's like they're still testing out all that stuff. And they said the vaccines won't be rolling out until April-ish. So, yeah. But aside from social media stuff, can we expect anything in the future, or are you still just really making sure to get on the union?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep trying towards the union because I'm just not taking a whole lot of work right now. It's not worth COVID exposure to me right now. So
Yeah. Which might be yeah, it's sad because I'm just still thinking about if I should do the thing on Sunday, but as of right now, I'm not even unsure right now. So, uh, it, and I actually have a job too, so it's like I'm more of being exposed by anything, because just yesterday I saw my first coupon bite, and that coupon Karen, right, had no mask on. So it's like, unless she walked into the store with her mask on and took it off when she started taking the thing, I really have no idea. But she was walking around with her goddamn mask on, and I'm just like, I have my mask on, and I'm just talking to my cashier, who I'm just like, one,
do they give you whole ass face shields?
nope, it's just the regular mask.
I would consider buying one. So, mask over nose and mouth, and then a whole ass face shield. I
I
wouldn't I wouldn't care at all what that looks like or what people think. I just ooh.
Anyway, that has been episode 2 of season 4. I hope this has been filmed a lot more better, because the other one was just so gobbled up on my side. At least you came out perfectly fine. My side was just like, But anyway, I hope you had a great time listening or watching this. So, yeah, take care and stay tuned for the next one.